What's up, everyone? My name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks, and welcome back to my three stocks on sale series where I use all of the current market volatility to go out there and find for you guys three brand new stocks every episode that I think are on sale at today's prices for the long term. And to make things even more fun and interesting, I specifically look for one low risk, one medium risk, and one high risk stock to give you a wider variety of stocks to look at depending on your own risk tolerance. But as always, just keep in mind that I only do this for fun to give you guys some different ideas of what's out there and available in the market, but it's always up to you to do your own research and make your own decisions. With that said though, if you are enjoying the series, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing if you haven't already. We're really close to 100,000. We reached there once, it dipped back down. I'm trying to get up there again, so if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe. It really helps the channel survive and it means a lot to me. But thank you for that. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into today's fresh new list of stocks. And as always, we'll be starting here first with our low risk option, something that is dominant and well established, but that has still crashed in price because of the current market volatility. And right now, I still really feel like Disney is just simply not being appreciated as much as they should be. Now, I get it, they do have all sorts of issues and reasons to be concerned. Business wise, they've been getting pretty political lately and they have entered into a lot of like social debate topics, which is something that you typically don't want to see your investments getting involved with, because it not only risks alienating much of the fan base that in this case would come to Disney for entertainment rather than politics, but in Disney's specific case, it's even started to hurt their bottom line since their home state of Florida has seen the legislature vote to remove certain tax benefits from them. And the reason why that stings right now is because this is coming at a time when Disney was already struggling with their own profitability issues due to the massive investment that they made in video streaming, as well as the fallout from the pepperoni lockdowns that forced theme parks, resorts, and movie theaters to close for extended periods of time, really hurting Disney's business. So when looking at net income, it caused it to fall from 11 billion in 2019 to negative 3 billion in 2020 and was still only positive by about 2 billion last year. However, all of that negativity has caused the stock price to now crash in a similar fashion to the way it did back in 2020 when things were even more pessimistic. And even with the recent rebound in the market that has lifted up a lot of stocks, including Disney a bit, well, in Disney's case, it is still down a massive more than 40% from its highs at today's prices. So, why do I think that this is undervalued here? Well, you really need to see past the current struggles to understand what we still have here is essentially the largest entertainment company in the world with more iconic brands, IP, and production capacity than really anyone else. Now, as a result, despite Disney Plus only launching a couple years ago, when combined with their other streaming services like Hulu and ESPN Plus, well, Disney now has more streaming subscribers than even Netflix. That is pretty crazy. Disney is literally now the number one largest video on demand streamer in the world with over 221 million subscribers versus Netflix just shy of that at 220 million. And keep in mind that this is at a time when just Disney Plus alone is growing subscribers by sometimes tens of millions every quarter, while Netflix has not only plateaued, but they've actually declined in each of the last 2 quarters as well. Meanwhile, Disney is showing really no signs of slowing down with a huge amount of content slated to release soon, especially from Marvel and Star Wars, which is what I'm personally more excited about myself. And with the economy and most of Disney's business open back up now, you're going to see a huge ramp up in growth for them, with sales expected to climb by almost 40% this year, with still another double digit 12% climb next year as well. And you know what this huge ramp up in sales means? Well, it means that their profits are also going to start recovering too. So, not only is their EPS expected to soar by over 40% on average over the next 5 years, but when combined with the stock crash, their price to earnings to growth ratio has now fallen to dirt cheap levels of less than 1, which is widely considered to be undervalued territory. In fact, that's like 50% cheaper than the rest of the sector average. So if you're telling me that I can own the worldwide leader in movie and TV streaming for a cheaper price in the sector, yeah, in my opinion, that is a long-term buy. I really don't think that their insane leadership in content and IP is going away anytime soon. And it's one of the reasons why I'm personally invested in Disney stock myself. I happen to like it at these levels. Okay, moving on to stock number two, though, that's going to be our medium risk option, which we usually go with a dividend paying stock since that can help lower the risk a little bit, since a falling price does mean a rising yield, and at least in most cases. And this time, I'm going with a stock that I do not currently own yet myself, but that is very high up on my watch list, and that is Unilever, ticker symbol UL, which is a pretty large conglomerate that owns many popular household brands. And I kind of think of them like Disney in the sense that their brands are also very iconic and very popular, except they're more so in the household and personal care markets rather than entertainment. But you've got things here like Ben & Jerry's, Klondike, Magnum, and Breyer's ice creams. They also own Hellmann's condiments and Skippy peanut butter. They own Bertolli pastas, Slim Fast Diet Foods, Lipton teas, Close Up and Pepsodent toothpaste. You got Q-tips. You've got Degree deodorant, Vaseline lotion, Dove, Axe, Lever 2000, Suave, St. Ives. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It's really impressive when you see the power behind so many iconic brands. However, the stock doesn't really reflect that power as it's been very volatile in recent years and is currently down more than a quarter of its value from its highs, which is an even larger crash than what they saw in the disastrous 2020 at the height of pessimism. And this is in large part due to a lack of growth and innovation because they're already so big while the macroeconomy is also doing pretty bad right now. So while sales and profits are usually very high, sometimes by tens of billions of dollars, well, recent years has seen a lot of stagnation with falling profits due to a number of restructurings and inefficiencies within the business. However, there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic about them turning things around over time thanks to new investments and acquisitions in some very high growth markets like, for example, gummy vitamins, which is the highest growth part of the vitamin and mineral supplements market. So what did Unilever do? Well, they not only acquired Ollie Nutrition, but they also purchased Smarty Pants vitamins too. In case you're not familiar with those, Ollie holds the number one market share in sleep gummies and number two market share as an overall gummy vitamins brand as well, while Smarty Pants generates the most multivitamin sales on Amazon with the second most in gummies as well. And they didn't stop there. They also acquired Liquid IV to gain the number one powdered hydration product on the market, while Onnit gives them the second most market share in nootropics and brain supplements as well. Plus, they even decided to shake things up internally by appointing famous activist investor Nelson Peltz to the board, who is also joining the compensation committee to increase the accountability of the management teams that are running the company. So basically, if things don't start turning around soon, those managers are going to be held to more accountable standards by an experienced investor that really doesn't play games. He's not known to. And even if all else fails, well, more than half of all Unilever's sales are actually generated from emerging markets, meaning that over time, these smaller countries will experience more growth than their larger counterparts, and that growth should slowly trickle down to Unilever where it is highly needed. And while you wait for all of these changes to produce results, well, the large stock crash means that you get to collect a huge dividend along the way, which has now risen to more than a 4% yield. For reference, the sector average is only less than half of that at just 1.6%. Plus, at these levels, the dividend is now higher than at any other point in the past decade. And valuation wise, similar to Disney, you're also getting an industry leader here that trades significantly cheaper than the sector with their forward PE ratio about 11% cheaper at these levels. It's definitely not without some risk, especially coming from that stagnation in their growth. So you are taking a little bit of a gamble here, betting that they can actually turn things around. But in my opinion, I think they are making all the right moves. And in the meantime, while you wait for that, you get to collect that super nice dividend, which, by the way, they've paid that dividend for literally decades. So I really don't think it's going to disappear anytime soon. It really does seem like a solid dividend option, especially in the kind of medium risk tier. Alright guys, that's going to leave us now with the third and final stock of the day, which is also going to be our high risk option. And for these, I usually go with more speculative companies that are definitely high risk, but that also have huge future potential, especially in a growing market that they operate in. And this time, I'm going with Match Group, ticker symbol MTCH, which is a stock that I've actually never talked about before on the channel, but I'm not really sure why, because they operate in a market that I think is going to be gigantic over the long term, so I definitely should have been talking about it. But that is the online dating market, since Match owns some of the most popular dating apps and sites around the world. For example, that includes like funner and more casual apps like OkCupid and Plenty of Fish, what was once a market leader in Match.com. They own very high growth apps that are taking off more recently, like Hinge, which is targeted at being more relationship focused and marketed as the app that is meant to actually be deleted. And by the way, I have a ton of friends that use Hinge, and they say that it's like by far the best app in the market. I know that's a little anecdotal, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. I think Hinge is probably going to be much bigger over time. But on top of that, they of course own Tinder, which generates the most revenue for them out of all their properties. And they even own some more specifically targeted apps for certain audiences like BLK and Chispa for Latinos and Pairs for Japanese. And they even have Our Time for older members to connect and do things together, as well as Azure Live, which is a popular video chatting app, especially in Asia. And really, the list just kind of goes on from there. It's a number of different things that they offer. But of course, online dating is their primary focus. And the reason for that is very simple. This is a gigantic market that, whether we want to admit it or not, we all know that it's going to get even larger over time. In fact, the market has already more than doubled from 2018 to last year, growing to over $5 billion, of which around $3 billion, by the way, was made just by Match Group alone. I mean, they have huge market dominance. And yet, that market is still expected to grow to close to $30 billion by 2027, according to Report Linker. Moreover, there are already more than 300 million people using dating apps, with around 20 million paying for premium features, so there's still more money to be made from those users too. They can add on more and more. And Tinder is the most popular among all of these apps, while also being the most downloaded app of last year. And speaking of Tinder, they make up by far the most market share of dating app users worldwide, while Hinge comes in at number 4, Plenty of Fish at number 5, you've got Match at number 8, and OkCupid at number 9, which gives Match Group a total of 5 out of the 10 most used dating apps. And that dominance by Tinder has allowed them, by the way, to generate very large sales, while they continue to work on building up higher growth apps like Hinge, which nearly tripled its revenue in 2020 and more than doubled it last year. And as a result, Match Group has seen their sales and profits both increase by over 20% a year since 2017, while also maintaining high margins of above 30%. Despite all of that success, though, the stock has actually crashed recently, falling by more than 60% from its highs, thus wiping away all of the pandemic gains that they saw from people being on their phones and trying to hook up and date virtually during, like all the lockdowns and everything else going on. The reason for that crash, though, is mostly because they're going through a correction right now where growth needs to slow down coming off of the pandemic highs, and thus revenues are only expected to climb by around 10% in each of the next 2 years, which is about half the growth that we've become accustomed to seeing. However, that's ignoring the big gain in subscribers from the pandemic that is now helping them grow their profits by over 17% a year on average over the next 5 years, which in turn has left the valuation pretty low for what is otherwise known as a high-flying growth stock that would normally trade at a very high valuation. But when looking at it, their current P ratio is definitely more expensive. It's about 50% more expensive than the sector. But when you factor in that future growth that we talked about, well, their price to earnings to growth ratio actually falls to over 40% cheaper than the sector. And at this point, I think the selling is overdone, which is why we see the stock trading significantly lower than the average analyst price target on Yahoo Finance. I'm not an investor in Match myself yet because I do already own just way too many high-risk stocks, which I've talked many times about on the channel in recent videos. But like Unilever, this is another stock here that I feel that if I was specifically in the market looking for this type of stock, well, this would be very high up on my watch list, and I think there's a lot of promise there. But anyway, those are the stocks for today's episode. What do you guys think? Do you own any of these stocks? And are there any that you want me to cover? Make sure you leave them down below. I'm always looking for fresh new stocks to include, to research for you guys, and to share my opinion on. So leave them for me down in the comment section. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support. I hope you're all doing well out there, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.